Toji is one of the most beloved characters in Jujutsu Kaisen. Despite the actions he commits for a majority of his screen time being downright evil, the Jujutsu Kaisen community just flocks to Toji in droves in a way that is particularly interesting, especially when you consider that he truly only gets shine in one arc. So as a pretty big fan of Toji myself, I want to break down his character in order to understand just what makes him so likable. When it comes to introducing new characters, first impressions matter. A good first impression can be the difference between a character being regarded as great by the community or a character being hated regardless of their growth after the fact. Sakura is actually a pretty good example of what a terrible first impression will do to your reputation, because despite growing and coming to really appreciate Naruto as a friend and close comrade, she gets a lot of flack because some of her first on-screen actions consisted of just dunking on Naruto, who the audience had already grown attached to. I'm not saying that Sakura would be some fan-favorite character or anything, but I will say that a better first impression could have only helped her standing in the Naruto community. Conversely, Naruto fans love to praise Rock Lee as a character, and in fact, often overhype his narrative relevance just because he had a really good introduction and Kishimoto made it clear how cool he was early on. People even think that the story would have been better with Lee as the protagonist almost exclusively because they like his personal theme and because his fights with Sasuke and Gaara are cool. Toji is someone who falls in the latter category, as I think he makes a very good first impression right out the gate, largely in part due to his character design and the initial intrigue behind his character. Just with this first page, Gege is establishing an interesting background narrative that'll be strung along for Toji throughout this arc, and more importantly, he shows off what is a very cool looking character. The scar and mischievous smile particularly stand out as some of Toji's most recognizable traits, and this continues to be the case all the way up until his character's conclusion. Subsequently, Gege continues to build Toji's character up as this mysterious, lazy, yet weirdly competent assassin, which keeps his intrigue for the audience high. Now, a pretty big, pretty funny elephant in the room when it comes to Toji and why he's liked so much is, well, a lot of the community just finds him attractive, just gonna be straight up. You could technically consider this a branching benefit of a good character design, and while it is, I think it's important to acknowledge this factor because not all good character designs result in a character that looks good in the conventional sense. Take Mahito for instance. This nigga is ugly as hell, but I would say that fits for his character and in the end results in his design being really good despite him being ugly as shit. In Toji's case, he gets the benefit of both worlds. He looks cool and badass, and he's hot. So he covers as many bases as possible when it comes to his design. Now, going just one layer deeper beyond the surface, I think that one reason Toji is one of the most well-liked JJK characters is particularly because of his attitude and personality. This guy has committed some straight-up devious acts, with his most prominent one being the murder of a middle schooler. So it's easy to see how if Gege didn't get the balance of Toji's character right, this guy could have been one of the most hated characters in Jujutsu Kaisen, rather than being generally well liked as he is now. On top of just shooting Riko, he also took a knife to the beloved Jujutsu Kaisen duo, and damn near everybody kinda just shrugs their shoulders at him because, well, he's cool. Gege actually does this a lot with his antagonists, where he'll just make them do really bad, really heinous things that in many other scenarios would lead to them being hated, but he just gives them such an insane amount of charisma and gives them just ridiculous bars so that they are the coolest people ever while like massacring a bunch of people. Mahito and Sukuna jump out as the most popular examples of this, and I think Toji is not really all that different from them. From the jump, it's made pretty clear that Toji is not your stereotypical assassin type character. He's smart and seems good at his job, sure, but he also has this air of carelessness, goofiness, and general idiocy that balances the serious nature of his actions quite well. Betting on a track race while talking strategy is just such a Toji thing to do, and it adds another dimension to his character, albeit a pretty unserious one. Toji being a hired hitman is something that is framed as a necessity. This guy clearly is a good-for-nothing just based on how he's described countless times in this arc, and he's only really good at killing, which resulted in the Sorcerer Killer moniker for him, but this isn't framed as some great tragedy immediately. In fact, at first, it's mostly played for laughs that the guy considered a jobless bum is also the only guy qualified enough to take Gojo down at this point in the story. Now, later on in the arc, we see that Toji had his pride and personal reasons for doing what he did, which definitely gives an added layer of depth to his character while still allowing for his pettiness to be pretty funny. But from that first impression perspective, it's clear that Toji kinda just does what he wants and kills people because he's good at it, not for any particular grand reason. It also doesn't hurt that this guy is just so sure of himself the entire arc, and that confidence just shows on screen so blatantly that it's kinda nuts. That brazen, devil-may-care attitude is just pretty wildly appealing, so when he's built up for all of hidden inventory as that guy, while also being a pretty funny and entertaining person to see on screen, it makes his arrival all the more exciting. Speaking of which, for all of my fellow meatheads who love turning off their brains and just seeing a cool fight, Toji from that point of view is just cool from the moment he stabs Gojo till the time he exits the series. He's just on demon timing as soon as he gets on the battlefield. There's no posturing about how what he's actually doing is right, there's no complex curse technique that needs to be explained, and there's no hesitance to just get to work and get the job done. Now, don't get me wrong, a morally great character can and has been done well in this series. A sorcerer with a complex curse technique can and has been done well in this series, but sometimes it's just nice to see someone who utterly breaks those conventions and just fights for the bag. Toji's a confident character who deserves the confidence that he has, but he's also a particularly cautious guy when it comes to fighting Gojo. He knows exactly who and what he's dealing with, and the fact that he's aware while also being confident just makes him seem so much more intelligent and overall cool. Anyways, I think the best way to summarize Toji's appeal, at least in the context of combat, is this: when Toji fights, it look cool. Now, as simple as that may sound, and as dumb as I intended to make it sound, that is a huge factor in whether or not a character, specifically in a battle shonen, will truly be well liked or not. It's basic and it's somewhat shallow, and maybe you could argue that there are more things to a character than that, but when we're talking about pure mass appeal, it's true. If you look good, you fight good, and your personality's cool, you're probably just going to be well liked. And I mean, Toji's also a participant of some of the best fights in the series, full stop, and I would say that this propels his widespread love to new heights. Toji is clearly different, and both the anime and manga do an absolutely amazing job of making sure that you, as the viewer, know that he's not like most other characters in the series. His speed is conveyed perfectly, and the ferociousness of each strike lets you know that this guy is just a different animal from every other character in the series. The whited out eyes and devilish grin keeps those charisma points up for Toji in the midst of a fight, and I just gotta take a second to applaud Gege because he just really knows what he's doing when it comes to making an antagonist. Many times you could argue that they don't have the philosophical or ideological depth that you can find in other antagonists in other series, but damn, are JJK villains fun to see cook. Toji in particular is really thorough with his mission and has some sick-ass lines. Like, bro, standing over the body of Gojo Satoru, teenager or not, and saying that you are just starting to remember how to do your job is insane. Like, it's actually ridiculous that a fight with Gojo was something to just kind of scrape the rust off. Pulling a gun on a dragon is also just crazy hard. I mean, I know it's become kind of a meme or whatever for like especially manga fans, but this is some real life sick shit. I mean, he pulled a gun on like a cursed spirit dragon. What more do you want from this guy? Really? On top of all of this, he tells a curse that she's not his type before slicing it and Geto up, then throws salt in the wound by cooking Geto for being a loser in spite of being blessed with cursed energy and a cursed technique. Toji all around is just a really fun presence for the story, and all I'm doing to gas Toji up is ignoring the narrative nuance that his character presents. He's funny, he looks cool, he acts cool, and he fights cool. All of this on its own would be enough for me, and probably a majority of the Jujutsu Kaisen fan base, but I haven't even scratched the surface on what Toji's personal story is and how that deeply affects the quality of his character. And to be honest, that could be a video in and of itself. Actually, if you guys want to see that Toji character breakdown in the future, subscribe and hit the bell so you're notified when I upload. I have a ton of JJK content coming out this season, so if you're interested, you can check out this playlist here. If this video does good enough, we may get a 30-minute Toji analysis, who knows? But in any case, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.